let's go to Tony Banks, who's calling us from Leeds. Good afternoon, Tony. Graham was talking about boots on the ground. Your boots have been on that same ground, haven't they?
Indeed, yes, yeah.
So you served what during the Gulf War?
I served with the first Gulf War
Right.
when we sort of liberated Kuwait. And it's strange to think that now some of the funding for ISIS is coming from Kuwait, from certain people within Kuwait as well, with the tenuous backing of the Kuwaiti government and Saudi Arabia, etc. And technically, the first Gulf War was to go in to help them and secure the oil fields, so it didn't. Yeah, so Saddam didn't come over from Kuwait and take on the oil fields. So we've kind of come full circle a little bit. The people who we went in to help is beginning to bite us now. But it was ever so. It was ever so in the Middle East. I think to continue. I think that we are damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. The rebels, when they took Mosul, they captured one of the country's capital banks, and within Mosul, the Bank of Mosul held around about $450 million. Now, the ISIS captured that, and not only did they capture $450 million in cash, they also captured gold, etc., etc. Not to mention the sort of vast armory that the Iraqi forces left behind, and nearly all their equipment was state-of-the-art American equipment, difficult to knock out because obviously it's the best you can get. The only people who can knock it out are people like us and the Americans. We've got to ask ourselves, I think, why on earth are we just getting minor help from Saudi Arabia? They've got one of the biggest air forces in the world. It could be argued they've got a bigger air force than we have now. They bought all their aircraft, and nearly all British bought, British trained pilots, etc., etc. And yet they hold back, and it's America, Britain, Germany, and the same old people take on the same old role. So, I mean,
it's a point that some others are making on Twitter this afternoon, saying, why do we need to be the world's policeman? And I wonder, as somebody who has been, the truncheon wielded by that policeman, if you like, in a former war, how do you feel about that question? And right now, do you think bombing is the right thing to do?
Well, right now, there were two questions there. First question, bombing is the right thing to do. It's the only thing to do right now, because we've got to knock out the equipment, the tanks, the vehicles, the trucks, the hardware that they captured. I mean, they're virtually like a proper army. They're led like a proper army. Most of the leaders of ISIS are ex-senior ranks from the Iraqi army, because they've got tactical knowledge, extremely good tactical knowledge. So we have to knock out the equipment. While we're doing that, we will kill several thousand soldiers, they're rebels. But we'll also start to kill. It won't take them long at all. Within days, they'll start to use human shields. They'll start to put that equipment in the middle of a village, and they'll start to locate weaponry into towns, into villages, and we will either have to bomb and release our bombs, these so-called smart weapons. Smart weapons aren't smart weapons. When an explosion goes off, there's a devastating radius of sort of death and destruction, and shrapnel does not choose between a small child or a fighter. And to come back to your second question, why should we be the policeman? Because quite frankly, we cause a lot of most of the problems we have to go in and sort out are caused by us either doing the wrong thing a couple of years ago, several years ago, or standing by and pontificating while we can see the problems developing in front of our eyes. Mainly all the things that are happening now in Iraq have spilled over, have certainly spilled over from Syria.
Can I ask you to stay with us, Tony? Because yours is a really interesting take. I just want to bring in Keith Douglas, who's calling from Rickmansworth. Hello there, Keith.
Hello, good afternoon. Nice to talk to you again, Anita, after that excellently chaired meeting between Jonathan Friedland and Mehdi Hassan, which I attended.
Thank you very much. I am blushing. You can't see that on radio, but I am. Keith, I just want you to talk to Tony, because Tony, with his experiences and also painting the picture of what it means and what might be caused by a bombing campaign, still says very clearly we should bomb. What do you say to Tony?
I say that ISIS is a total red herring and a pretext to oust Assad. Bombing, you can bomb terrorists, but you can't bomb terrorism. And the point about the Middle East is it is not America's province. And America and its friends, Britain, France and the Gulf and Saudi Arabia, have no right to behave as if they alone are the policemen, is the single policeman of the world. China and Russia are now equal policemen and should be brought in. And the only way of bringing them in is through United Nations. And if we approach Russia and say, we will recognize Assad. He is part of the solution, not the problem. You'll find the Russians and the Assad and the Iranians will be very pleased to squeeze out ISIS, which is just a band of 25,000 terrorists. Not a difficult problem.
Well, can I bring Tony back on this? Because Tony knows the terrain. Yeah, come on in, Tony. I can hear you, yeah.
Keith, yeah, I can see where you're coming from, and I do respect your point of view. The fact that Russia stuck up for Assad is because Russia's got a large naval base that they do not want to let go.
That's right.
And they're desperate not to let that go. And if so the regime falls, that will probably go. So that's the main reason they've stuck with it.
Oh yes, that's fairly clear.
And when you say, part of me actually totally is on your side, but you and I think, sort of seem to be pushing against an open door. But the main thing is, this is why we have to bomb. I mean, while I'm speaking to you now, our sort of jets.
What's he going to solve?
Keith, let him say, Keith.
Our jets are bombing right now, and this is why. Shall I tell you the reason why? It's because you can have a lot of rhetoric, and I totally agree that we have to go to the United Nations, and something very quickly has to be sorted out, and it has to be a concerted effort. However, it's been going on now months, and virtually nothing's happened apart from we've been put onto more of a war footing. But while I'm speaking, while we don't do anything and stop them vehicles rolling down them roads, they're literally minutes away. And once you get a foothold into a town, into a location, you can put up defences. It doesn't take them long to start killing women and children, to start beheading women and children, to start raping women, and to start killing all the menfolk. It takes minutes to do a lot of damage in a small village. So while we're talking about United Nations, which is totally right, and it's the only way forward, but right now we have to stop hardware from rolling downhill. We have to stop the ISIS with all their equipment, and they've got a lot of equipment and a lot of manpower. We have to physically hold them and draw a line and stop them advancing, and that'll give us time for our politicians to start earning their pay and to do what they should have done.
I think it's time I came in on this.
Tony, thank you very much indeed for your call. Yes, Keith, very briefly come in, because we've got lots of calls stacked up.
Well, you had a good response there, so I think you should give me some
Keith,
form of response.
yeah, please do.
Basically, the thing is this, that they aren't advancing now. They haven't been advancing for a while because of the bombing that's going on. There's nothing wrong with getting rid of ISIS. That's easy. And they are actually. They're not making any advances now. The thing is that America overnight is bombing Homs in Syria, which they have no right to do. That's totally illegal on international law. They have no right to invade a sovereign state in that way. And if they don't go to the United Nations soon, they'll be up before the criminal court, will the United States. How about that?
Okay, Keith, thank you very much indeed for your call. Let's take another one from Ali. Ali, good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi there. Now, just a little bit of background. Your background is very interesting. You were conscripted into the Iranian army, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and served during the Iran-Iraq war?
Yes.
So, you also know the terrain. Tell me what you make of what is going on this afternoon.
Well, Bashar al-Assad, al-Maliki, and Iranians legitimized ISIL. Now we are asking them to help. That further, because these were divisive in the first place, and further angers the legitimate grievances of the Sunnis in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
The next my next item I wanted to say was bombing from air will help, but will not stop it. Britain, the West, actually owes this to Iraqis and to their own security to put boots on the ground.
Right. Okay. So you would say not just to be clear, because the sound quality of the phone caller. So do forgive me. I'm just going to just repeat what you just said. Not only do you support bombing, but you would say actually they need to go further and there need to be British boots on the ground.
It has to be, because this was created by the West, and now you owe it to your own security and to. It's a moral duty of yours now. And finally, I want to say who is financing ISIL. Bombing a few people is much more difficult than oil tankers, which take the oil away from them. Who is financing them? Who is laundering their money? This is where you have to tackle them.
Yeah.
Who is providing them with logistics? No, asking Iranian president who puts British flag in the public toilets to help you, just it's amazing.
Right, okay. Ali, just stay on the line. Sandy Dunn calling from London. Ali says we have a moral obligation to not just commit air cover, not just help diplomatically, not just bomb, but also to put soldiers on the ground. What do you say to him?
Well, I'm not in favour. We've got to get out of the Middle East. The bombing's going to cause too much collateral damage, or some people call it collateral murder. There's a dependency going on both ways. We're dependent on oil and gas. The Time magazine printed an article that said $5 trillion had been spent on this war, Bush-Blair war on terror. Imagine if that had been spent developing alternative technology. Our dependency on the oil and gas is matched by the Arabian countries, the Middle East nations, the Arab nations, Saudi Arabia especially. They're dependent on petrodollars. So this dependency is going both ways.
Okay, but just to put this to you, Sandy, we are where we are now.
Yes.
And
so we've got
to
take in all the refugees. We've got to help the humanitarian effort.
Okay, Ali, you want to come back in?
Yes.
Yes, she is quite right, what she is saying. But I think you are right as well. We are where we are.
We are where we are.
The collateral damage would be a lot less than what ISIL is killing every single day, murdering people, raping, killing children by kicking their heads in.
Yes, but ISIL will multiply. This is going to cause the ISIL to multiply.
Exactly. Asking Iranians will multiply this. Giving a democratic regime in Iraq, free from al-Maliki or Bashar al-Assad, will get rid of ISIL.
Look,
ISIL came because
can I come back
ISIL
in?
is created because of the...
Okay, Ali, you made that point. Let's just briefly come back in.
Worldwide massive demonstration about climate change last week about carbon emissions. Our carbon emissions have to be lessened. That $5 trillion and mounting could be spent developing alternative technology.
Okay, Sandy.
Business world agrees with it.
Sandy, that's a point you've made very clearly before. So, but thank you for making it again. Let's take some more of your calls. 03700 100 444. Lots of things stacking up on text and Twitter. Mark Davis, I'm sick of hearing about this threat to us. No such threat exists. We will not be scared into war on this pretext, Peter Burns says, but we could talk to ISIS and Iraq and help them resolve any issues. David, all we need to attack any position is the nod from the United States. We don't need foreign policy. We have United States policy. That seems to be enough. Another one here, Toff writes, if bombing ISIS was really about people being beheaded and other vile punishments, then we would be bombing Saudi Arabia, not supporting it. Let's take another call now. Eileen Peck is calling from Essex. Good afternoon, Eileen.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hi. I think the first thing I'd like to say is that no more light has been shed on this for me as a result of the debate this afternoon. It all sounds extremely complicated and I feel very bogged down. One of the things I'd really like to say is that although I struggle to understand it, one thing that I do know is that a major consideration when any political decision is made, whether it's to go bombing another country or anything, is how it impacts on our economy. We live in a capitalist society that depends on material consumption, the backbone of which is fossil fuels. Whatever happens, we must keep the oil flowing. So I think the elephant in the room and the hidden agenda is our economic interests in this region.
Okay.
In the debate about ISIS in Iraq, I've heard no mention really from our politicians of our oil interests in the Middle East. And however the government choose to dress it up, I reckon our decision to allow airstrikes and be involved in this region is very, very heavily influenced by our economic interests.
Eileen, thank you very much. That is a point that is being made by quite a few of you this afternoon. A few more of your thoughts here. Otto English says the greatest contribution the UK could make militarily would be to butt out of Middle East politics altogether. Our reputation is tainted. Matthew Scott says, if I was in a Kurdish village threatened by ISIS, I would thank God for America and Britain, and I wouldn't care if their war aims were hazy. Jack Guthrie in Surrey, why is the West pursuing aerial bombing when it will cause immense suffering among innocent Iraqis? The ISIS murderers, not their human shields, should be targeted by our special forces. Let's take another call on this. 03700 100 444 is the number. Beth Roberts is calling us from Lanreath. Hello there, Beth.
Hello there. It's Lanreath.
I beg your pardon. Thank you for telling me. Right. So what was the point you wanted to make, Beth?
Well, I can't see that aggression in the Middle East would achieve anything. My grandfather was killed in Iraq, which was then Mesopotamia, in 1916. His father was the first British officer to be killed in the Second Afghan War in the Battle of Ali Masjid in 1878. What has changed? Nothing. We don't understand these people. We don't understand their culture. We assume that our culture is the culture. Mm. And the other thing is that aggression just breeds more aggression.
Do we need to understand the culture? Do we need to have that depth of understanding? When you have a sovereign nation, which is what Iraq is, and they say, please help us, when they make a direct appeal and say, we need your help to deal with this problem, isn't that enough?
No, I don't think so. I think you do have to understand the culture of the countries that you go into in order to achieve the best way of doing things.
But then it's all right to say no to a country that asks for help.
It depends what sort of help they're asking for. And, if it is help which is, can you be the third person in a discussion about this? Can we have somebody to act as an arbitrator? Mm-hmm. Think about how wars have escalated right from the beginning of time. When you started off with a stone as your or a rock as your weapon, then you got into making spears, and then you got making bows and arrows. It went on and on and on.
I take your point, Beth. Thank you very much indeed. Just a few more of your thoughts, and then I know there are a lot of you who want to talk about English votes for English laws, a subject that was very heatedly discussed in a heated way in the conversation with Jonathan. Just a few more of these. When Clinton was president, we had airstrikes on Iraq about once a week. Did it do any good? No, not really. Another one here. What exactly was so bad about Assad that our Arab allies in these airstrikes don't do in their countries? We'll end up talking to ISIS or the allies of ISIS. We always do, after thousands are left dead. And one more here. Dr. John Murray Budd says we're being dragged into yet another pointless adventure we cannot afford. Iran, Turkey, the Emirates and the Saudis, just sort this problem out yourselves without the West's involvement.